Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we react to the Sunday morning news shows that we watch so that you don't have to. And I am one of your hosts, Katie Halper.
I'm the second host, Aaron Maté. Good Monday morning, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. If you're watching us live, it's great to have you along. And remember, our website is usefulidiotspodcast.com. It's right there on the bottom of the screen. So go there, support the show, and get bonus content.
And definitely give us a like. It's a free way to support this show and get the word out there. And we do, I think, some important analysis. I don't like to brag, but it's important stuff to get to show people, given how propagandistic the news is. So help give it a like, send it to your friends and family, especially the ones who are terrible on issues, so that they can either learn or be tortured by us. One of the two.
Yeah, or cut you off and no longer talk to you because they're so offended at the content you watch on YouTube. And in that case, we do you maybe a favor.
Exactly. We help you filter.
Yeah, filtering out your ignorant loved ones. So
there you go.
You're welcome in advance.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. All the more reason. Pay it back and pay it forward by giving us a like. Also subscribe. We passed 100,000 subscribers, which is great. We thank you for doing your part, for your patriotism.
Yes. But we also scorn you because that number is way too low. So shame on you also for giving us such a low subscriber number. We should be in the 10 millions. Yes.
Yes. If we're being humble.
Yes.
Which we obviously are.
Well, okay, let's get to it. What a busy week. Joe Biden was the subject of a special counsel investigation that let him off the hook for his alleged mishandling of classified documents on the grounds that he's too old, basically, to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
Because he would come off to a jury as sympathetic with a very, very bad memory. And
he lacked the intent required.
Right. Even though the prosecutor found that he did mishandle classified documents. Right. So this was very embarrassing for the White House. And they've spent the ensuing days trying to contain the fallout. So let's go to Meet the Press.
Good Sunday morning. On a week in which Republicans suffered embarrassing defeats on Capitol Hill, it was President Biden who wound up dealing with perhaps the biggest crisis. Democrats are reeling, using words like nightmare and beyond devastating to describe special counsel Robert Hur's report on President Biden's handling of classified documents. The special counsel found no criminal charges against President Biden are warranted, but the report says the president, quote, willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen, including.
For those of you who aren't on the edge of your seats right now, just enthralled by this talk. Yes, we're talking about Doc Talk. We are once again
into
their own Doc Talk. Yeah. Now it's funny to listen to Biden being potentially subject to criminal charges as he's currently overseeing a genocide. And you think when you hear Biden criminal charges, you think, is he maybe going to be held accountable for overseeing the mass murder of tens of thousands of innocent people inside Gaza? But no, this is about, once again, Doc Talk.
By funding it without congressional approval, anything like that. No, Doc Talk, right.
Marked classified documents about Afghanistan and notebooks containing sensitive intelligence sources and methods, which he shared with a ghostwriter. That's an allegation Biden denies. The documents found in a
to be fair, he probably forgot it if he did do it.
Badly damaged box near a collapsed dog crate in Mr. Biden's Delaware garage. Especially devastating, the report puts what it calls Biden's diminished faculties at advanced age front and center. President Biden fired back Thursday.
Something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing.
Do you take responsibility for at least being careless with classified material?
I take responsibility for not having seen exactly what my staff was doing.
Oh, come on. What a little snitch. Or not even a snitch. I mean, just
No,
throwing his staff under the bus.
It's such a snitch move. Yeah.
It is a snitch move. Yeah.
I take responsibility for
Yes.
having incompetent staff.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm flawless, but my staff failed me. I
Right.
take responsibility for that.
It's like the equivalent of when you do a job interview and it's like, what's your one flaw? It's like, I work too hard.
Now, according to the report, the president did not remember key dates about his term as vice president, and the report claims he did not remember even within several years when his son Beau died.
How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business. I don't need anyone to remind me when he passed away.
Well, apparently you did.
Yeah, and he's gotten some things wrong before about his son and the circumstance and his death.
Right.
You know, he's gotten many things wrong over the course of his career. I mean, the point is, he's also, it's not just he has a bad memory. He's elderly. He's a liar. He's been caught lying so many times about everything. Fighting South Africa, fighting apartheid in South Africa,
getting arrested, visiting Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, I mean, this is not some new issue with him.
Right. It's just the media like never points it out. They lean more into the ineptitude, bumbling grandpa than they do liar.
Yes.
And in a rare pushback from First Lady Jill Biden, calling the special counsel report, including the comments about Beau, inaccurate and personal political attacks about Joe. But Democrats worry about the age issue already.
The irony is that this guy who wrote the report, or made this judgment on Biden, is probably like, what do you want from me? I was working with what I had and I did you a favor. I said he shouldn't be charged.
Yeah, and there is a tape of this exchange between the special counsel and Biden. So if the Biden administration really believes that the special counsel did him wrong, they could just call for the tape to be released.
Right.
I haven't heard them do that because I think they know what's on the tape.
Right. Tape gate.
Looming over President Biden's re-election bid. 76% of voters have major or moderate concerns about Biden not having the mental and physical health for a second term. That includes more than half of Democrats. It's an issue President Biden has had to address for years.
If I were to run, I think they're going to judge me on my vitality. Can I still run up the steps of Air Force Two? Am I still?
Actually, no, he can't do that. I don't know if you guys saw that footage of him running up the steps,
stumbling,
falling. Yeah.
In good shape? Do I have all my faculties? Am I energetic? I think it's totally legitimate for people to ask those questions. This is for the voters to decide. Take a look. Look at me, see if I have the energy, see if I know what I'm talking about, and make their judgment. Only thing I can say to the American people, it's a legitimate question to ask anybody. Watch me.
This past week, President Biden confused the names or countries of 3 world leaders in separate events. Former President Donald Trump, who is 77, has had his own flub, saying Nikki Haley was in charge of the Capitol on January 6th instead of Nancy Pelosi. He has pleaded not guilty to 40 criminal counts related to his handling of classified documents. And this report argues the 2 cases are different. While President Biden alerted authorities and cooperated with the investigation, former President Trump, quote, allegedly did the opposite, enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it. Trump fired back at that on Friday.
They ended up with the now famous raid on Mar-a-Lago. We're having a talk, and they raided my house. If he's not going to be charged, that's up to them. But then I should not be charged.
And joining me now is Homeland Security.
Well, there you have it. I actually think it would have been better if they had charged him and declared him mentally fit than if they didn't charge him because he was mentally unfit.
Right. Yeah, this was pretty embarrassing for Biden. And, but again, what's not a political problem for him in the eyes of all these pundits is him overseeing a genocide.
Yeah.
Which all of this overshadows. But I wonder, if ever he is tried for being accomplice to mass murder, whether that could be his defense. Has a
you're
memory,
right.
So this could come in handy for him.
True, right.
Should there ever be some justice in this world?
Right. And complicit in genocide. Right. Yeah, that would be helpful. All righty. What do we got next? I just lost my sheet by accident.
Okay, well, let's see how this special counsel report is impacting the re-election chances, which were already not very high. And the co-chair of Biden's campaign, tough job, by the way, to be the co-chair of president.
Yeah, really
campaign.
hard. Yeah.
His name is Mitch Landrieu, and he came on Meet the Press.
Which would you rather be, his co-chair or his Karine Jean-Pierre, his spokesperson?
Ooh. I mean, I think definitely the co-chair, the spokesperson. Karine Jean-Pierre has to be out there every single day,
right?
And that's why her she can't even look up from the podium.
Right, she's always looking down.
It's amazing that they still haven't corrected that. They still haven't been like, Karine, please just look up. You have to look up.
Right.
I can't look up.
I can't bring myself to do it.
The lies are too much. By the way, have you seen the clip of how Kamala defended Joe Biden after the special counsel report?
Yes, I did.
Okay, well, maybe if we have time later on, we can play it. It's so funny because basically Kamala's defense of Joe Biden was trying to say was basically, look how he's handled the Israel-Palestine crisis. We're supposed to be impressed by that. Right. And she's like, he's been at meetings. He's talked to people at meetings. He's
talked conversations.
He's talked to all these people, and we're supposed to be impressed by that, and not pay attention to his obvious cognitive decline. Okay, anyway.
But also speaks to, once again, how what should be a scandal, his overseeing this genocide and enabling it, is considered actually politically advantageous, almost. Far from being a scandal, it's actually something she points to as an example of competence.
Well, here also to make that case is the Biden campaign co-chair, Mitch Landrieu.
NBC News. In fact, our NBC News poll found that 76% of voters are concerned about whether the president has the necessary mental and physical health to be president for a second term. What is the plan to convince voters otherwise?
Well, let's just say two things. This election is going to be about two men, but really two different visions for the country. President Trump just the other night confused what day of the week it was. He has confused who the leader of North Korea and China are. He's confused the leaders of Hungary and Turkey. By the way, Speaker Mike Johnson was on the other day, and he confused Iraq and Iran. And of course, President Trump doesn't know the difference between Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley. And oh, by the way, last night, President Trump saw fit to basically dump on Nikki Haley's husband, who is serving in the military right now because he hasn't around. That's what he continues to do. So the people of America are going to have to make a choice. Are they for a guy like Joe Biden, who wakes up every day thinking about the people of America, thinking about how to lift people up? Or are they going to be for Donald Trump, who has already said, and you can believe him when he says this, even though when his lips are moving, he's usually lying, that he is going to be engaged in revenge and taking us backwards? I think the choice is clear. You know what Joe Biden remembers? He remembers how to build 46,000 infrastructure projects. He remembers how to build one of the strongest economies in the world. He remembers how to make sure that the unemployment rate stays as low as it has for 50 years and to create 800,000 jobs. And that is why, let me just finish, that is why the president says, watch me. And the president has demonstrated an incredible amount of accomplishment in a few short years that outpace anything that Donald Trump has ever done, including creating 15 million jobs.
People are watching him, and again, 76% of them have those concerns, and so do some of his donors. This is what the Washington Post is saying. Quote, top Biden donors were fielding calls and text messages from anxious Democrats, asking if other Democrats still had time to jump into the presidential race. When is Gavin getting in? Or how about Whitmer or Shapiro, buzzed around Democratic circles over the last 24 hours. How do you respond to Democrats who say they want to see a change at the top of the ticket?
I'm in the process of doing it right now and demonstrating that the president's accomplishment have really been second to none. And Joe Biden's going to get up every day. The one thing Joe Biden is never going to do is count on this. He is never, ever going to quit, because that's not what he's done his entire life, notwithstanding the fact that, by the way, he lost another child early in his life, and he got up and he went to work. And then he had difficulty with his other son, and he got up and he went to work, and he's going to keep doing that as we move the country forward.
He actually did quit. He had to quit over plagiarism. Once he dropped out
when he was running
quit
for
other
president.
Races.
Yeah, like when he ripped off the stump speech of like a British politician.
Yeah, Neil Kinnock.
About working in the coal mines, and
right, exactly.
It turned out he was stealing this guy's speech.
Right.
And yes, he did have difficulty. There was a reference there to his son Hunter's difficulties.
Right.
Yes, he did get up to go to work still, and he also got Hunter basically a job on Burisma, a
Right.
Ukrainian energy company after Biden's administration
Look,
helped overthrow the government there.
It takes mental competence to engage in that nepotism
Yes.
and corruption. You
Yes.
couldn't do that unless you were competent. Yeah.
It's very impressive.
Yeah.
It's very, very impressive. Okay, let's move on to Senator Chris Coons, my former travel partner.
Right.
Yeah, my former travel buddy, who is also a staunch ally of President Biden. They're from the same state. And Chris Coons is here to defend his friend Joe Biden.
And I just want to say Chris Coons has blood on his hands, not just because of the, of course, slaughter of Palestinians, and he refused to call a ceasefire when asked to by Aaron Maté, but he has blood on his hands for having Aaron Maté thrown off a train. Throw Maté from a train.
Yeah, sounds like a great movie. Yeah. He did have me thrown off a train, and I never forgive or forget.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Never again, Chris.
And things from people who spend a lot of time with. I hear similar things from people who spend a lot of time with Biden recently, just like you said. And by the way, we're going to hear from Bibi Netanyahu later in the show, and he's had interactions, and you'll. You
hear that, Coons? Like, ask Bibi.
Ask Bibi.
Biden's so on it that he's giving Bibi everything he wants to commit mass murder. He can vouch for him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Could he give him all those weapons and that moral legitimization and tactical support if he were an old, incompetent man? No way. Genocide takes work. You got to cross your T's and dot your I's.
See what he says. But let's look at what happened when he came out. Public perception is what's important here in a campaign. Let's take a look at what happened when he came out Thursday night to defend himself on this and to insist that his memory is just fine and he's fit. But look at what happened.
As you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Schiff, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in.
I mean, he's holding a press conference.
So people who
I'm just impressed that he remembered the president of Egypt's name, even though he called Egypt Mexico.
Right. Yeah, sure. He got 1 out of 2, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right name, wrong country.
Exactly.
People were speculating why he confused Egypt and Mexico. And, the president of Egypt's name is Sisi. So is he thinking like, C is in Spanish, like, yes, he's thinking that,
right.
That must make him a Mexican. I don't know, but
I see. Right. Yes. I suppose. Right. Sisi and AMLO are kind of hard to confuse, but maybe he's thinking countries that live next to genocidal countries.
There we go.
So Mexico or Egypt. Yeah.
Yes. But the thing is, his flub there got all the attention because he mixed up AMLO with Sisi, two very different countries.
Or Mexico with Egypt, honestly.
Or Mexico with Egypt. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what people overlook there too is what he said there about Egypt refusing to allow aid into Gaza during this crisis. I don't think that's true. I think what he's actually doing there, he's covering up for Israel. It was Israel that refused to let aid in and insisted that any aid coming in through Egypt has to be inspected inside Israel first, which led to huge amounts of delays. And Biden, rather than telling Israel to stand down, went along with that.
Right.
So he's actually, in the course of committing such an egregious error, also covering up for Israel there.
Well, that's kind of the perfect metaphor for Biden, isn't it? It's like we get lost in the mental ineptitude and then neglect to focus on his lies, like we were saying earlier in the show, or neglect to focus on the fact that he's enabling genocide.
Exactly. Yeah.
So again, we see once again his fumbling idiocy protecting him from his genocide. Thank God for small favors.
Push back against this notion that his memory's gone. And he's confusing the president of Egypt with the president.
Right. Jonathan, you've been at this a long time. As you well know, small gaffes are a part of what all of us in public life do. Speaker Johnson of the House just confused Iran and Israel. He said, we are beginning to send aid to Iran. Donald Trump confused Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley. Here's what matters, not the occasional small gaffe. He had a 12-minute press conference where he was focused, engaged, purposeful, and all you're focused on is that 1 minute at the end.
That's
not what distinguishes him
that's not
from
exactly
his opponent.
That's not exactly fair. And I will concede there are many moments, and we have, Lord knows, talked about them, where Donald Trump seems wildly confused about a lot of things. But
untruthful and alarming in the things he said.
And we've focused on all of that. But this was not just
small gaffes, big laughs.
Oh, that's good. Small gaff. Yeah, that should be his 2024 slogan.
Yeah, small gaffes, big laughs.
One moment in the 12-minute press conference. I mean, take a look at what we saw just recently, a handful of other events. Take a look, a few more.
Or, you know what, going back to, what we heard Biden earlier talking about how fit he is like, watch me, see if I can run up the stairs of Air Force 2 or Air Force 1. Small gaffes, strong calves.
Oh, that's good.
That? Yeah. That's
small
a good
gaffes, strong calf. Hey, why sell yourself short, Aaron? Put them all together. Small gaffes, strong calves, big laughs.
Big laughs, yeah. Biden 2024, right there. Yeah.
There you go.
There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas. I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from from France looked at me.
I mean, Mitterrand, whether he's from Germany or France, obviously he's from France, but he's been dead for 25 years. I mean, there are...
But for Biden, he's just still mourning Mitterrand. He refuses. He's a Mitterrandist or something. You know what I mean? That's intentional.
Let him grieve, media. Exactly. Let him grieve.
Yeah.
Mitterrand. He's not over it yet.
Yeah, how dare they throw Mitterrand and his mourners under the bus? Yeah, let him grieve.
Respect Biden's grieving process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, he's fine to oversee the mass murder of tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza, but he has the right to mourn his friend Mitterrand from France, who died, 20 years ago.
In fact, that's why he can't actually have empathy towards the Palestinians. He's still not over Mitterrand. It's kind of how some people after October 7th, they were angry that people dared point out what Israel was doing to Palestinians because they were still grieving. How dare people politicize October 7th by wanting to prevent a massacre? Yeah. Similar phenomenon.
Yeah. By the way, and that gaffe about not remembering Hamas, he called Hamas the opposition.
Right.
And someone had to be in the front row, be like, you mean Hamas? He's like, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
Number of these incidents, and they may be gaffes. We all make mistakes. But this is what the American public is seeing, and it's raised concerns. Our poll shows over 80% responding, saying that they think that Biden is too old.
By the way, that Coons is like, I wish I could just throw this guy off the set. Do to him what I did to Aaron Maté. Throw John Carl from the set, yeah.
To serve as president again.
And Jonathan, if press coverage focuses relentlessly on things that don't represent Joe Biden's real body of work, you can push towards that kind of result. That poll should have been about who's actually working to secure our border. Joe Biden, who's worked across the aisle for months with a bipartisan group in the Senate, or Donald Trump, who is willfully killing the bipartisan border deal in the Senate, not because he wants to secure America, but to secure his own reelection. What that poll could have been about is who understands that our alliances keep us safer. Joe Biden, who's led 50 countries to come to the defense of Ukraine, or Donald Trump, who alarmingly last night bragged about a story where he claims he threatened a NATO ally to throw them to the Russian wolves if they didn't pay up. NATO isn't a protection racket, but it is a security alliance. So the substance.
Oh, I beg to differ, Senator Chris Coons. NATO actually is a protection racket, as we're seeing now with people trying to make the case for Biden's Ukraine bill because it's going so badly, he needs more money, that basically this is good because we're recycling money into the military-industrial complex. So that sounds like a protection racket to me. And Coons is trying to use that as a reason to defend Biden. But I love what he says there. Look at Biden's body of work.
Yeah, I know.
Right? As if he's like a film director.
Exactly.
Look at his oeuvre.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Look at his cannon. Look at his cannon.
Look at the cannon,
overseeing like this disastrous proxy war with Russia and Ukraine, the Gaza genocide, supporting every single disastrous foreign war, the crime bill. Yes, what a body of work to brag about.
Impressive body. Yeah, he is well-rounded. He's well-rounded in his racism domestically and internationally. Not everyone can say that.
But I do love to hear like when like the language of like the creative arts seeps into politics. Like last week we heard from Jake Sullivan saying that like we have a concept for how we're going to respond to these attacks on our forces. The concept does not involve just withdrawing our forces and ending the Gaza genocide, but we have another concept. We're not really prepared to talk about it, but trust me, it's out there. It's a concept.
It's out there. Yeah, it's in 3 acts.
All right. Well, let's get to the most painful part of today's show. We have to listen to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Oh my God.
The guy who has thwarted all calls for a negotiated release of the captives, which could have avoided all of this carnage and could have gotten every single captured Israeli home had he just engaged with Hamas's offers to negotiate an exchange of prisoners, because there are thousands of innocent Palestinians being held in Israeli torture chambers. But Netanyahu cares more about massacring Palestinians than he does about rescuing his own people.
Right.
So here he is going on Fox News to defend his genocide.
Yes, now Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Welcome to Fox News Sunday, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, and by the way, he did a blitz of these. He did at least 2 of these because he was preparing to defend the bombing of Rafah. And I actually think another thing, so he probably would have done this anyway. But remember, last week on Face the Nation, we had a general saying that Israel was failing to achieve its goals and had made no difference, no significant impact in taking away Hamas's power. So they probably weren't happy about that.
And there was a congressional briefing last week in which top U.S. intelligence officials said the exact same thing.
Right.
That Israel's stated goal of destroying Hamas is not being accomplished at all, and that they've have not killed a very significant amount of Hamas leadership, while meanwhile slaughtering so many Palestinian civilians, the real targets of his campaign.
Exactly. Yeah. So Bibi must have been very furious about this. But guys, this isn't me. This is Western Goods commenting. 3K watching, only 800 likes. Make it make sense. Guys, what are you doing? We try to train you. Let's get this up to 1K. If you haven't already liked, now don't like if you have already liked, but if you haven't already liked, please give us a like. We know that not 1/3 of you, only 1/3. We don't believe that 2/3 of you are hate watching this. Although if you do, thanks for stopping by. And we should come up with another nickname for BB because it is too endearing, Aaron. What could we call him? Bobo?
Bonzo? Well, Bobo in Spanish means idiot.
Right,
but
exactly.
That's too kind.
Right,
to him.
he's evil.
He's evil.
We should just call him Evil Netanyahu.
Sure, or like the new Hitler. I don't know.
Yeah, the new Hitler. I like that. We could call him Beevil. Beevil then has the BB in it. Beevil Netanyahu.
That's certainly an improvement. Yeah.
Where are we at likes, Wilson? I'm sorry to do this, guys.
We got 1.2K. We just jumped out.
All right. So I'm gonna have to keep interrupting the show. Sorry. All right. I mean continue to do this when we don't get the likes.
I did Satan Yahoo.
Satan Yahoo. That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that. Norman Finkelstein, our friend Norman, calls Israel a satanic state.
Exactly. SS.
So that one works. Satan Yahoo. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's do it. And then say if it's Satan Yahoo, his nickname has to be Satan.
Okay, I'm with that.
All right, cool.
Let's go back to Satan.
Exactly.
Yeah, good to be with you, Shannon.
Let's start there where Ben left off. The eradication of Hamas versus bringing home the hostages. Can you have both?
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. In fact,
they actually are mutually exclusive. Let's just be honest about it. But okay, back to the liar.
Yeah, mutually compatible, because the only thing that will get the hostages released is the thing that will defeat Hamas, which is a sustained military effort. It already got half the hostages released. It'll get the other half too. But
lie.
No. What got half the hostages released was a negotiation.
Yes. A pause.
That's what got them released. And then in exchange, Israel released some of the Palestinians it keeps hostage in its prisons. And that got Israelis released. And what got Israelis killed is when Netanyahu bombed them during his mass murder operation inside Gaza. And there was that incident where you had those Israelis waving white flags, but because Israeli forces thought they were Palestinian, they just murdered them in cold blood, on top of the other hostages that have been killed in Israeli bombings.
Yeah. I mean, they were speaking in Hebrew, waving a white flag, but what are you going to do when you're just trained to be kill dogs, murderous thugs? Things happen, which is why, again, any single person with the bring them home now, all they should be advocating for is a ceasefire. If they actually cared about these hostages, that's what they'd be advocating for. If they cared about hostages more than killing Palestinians, that's what they'd be advocating for. I wonder if they realize that. Is it stupidity or just bloodlust? I think maybe it is. Well,
yeah.
For the politicians it is, but for people on the street walking around with the bring them home stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's hard to psychologize Israelis. Yeah. It's as Norman Finkelstein also says, they're a misogynist state. They're a crazy state.
Yeah, right. And the ones here in America also hard because they're misogynists for their genocide supporters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, we're not gonna, it's impossible to listen to him, but we're gonna get through as much of this as we can.
Yeah.
I want to say one thing to your audience, which people don't realize. Victory is within reach. We've already destroyed 3/4 of the Hamas organized terrorist battalions. 3/4, 18 out of 24. We're not going to leave the other 6. It's like you leaving.
Where does he get these numbers from? Which
lies out of his ass.
There's no, he's just such a liar. He's a pathological liar. It's not even true.
Right.
And why is he trying to say this? Is because he knows the public is not with him in the U.S. Public, like despite the fawning media coverage, supportive media coverage for Israel, the public, most of the public in the U.S. does not support Israel because they don't want to be accomplices to mass murder. They can see the horror on the screen. So that's what he's trying to say. Victory is within reach. I promise you, it's almost over. Just give me a little bit more time. That's what he's trying to say here.
Right. It's absolutely disgusting. Yeah.
1/4 of ISIS in Iraq in place, and you say, well, they can have their little territory. It's okay. Obviously, ISIS in Iraq in place, and you say, well, they can have their little.
Sorry, I just want to go back here because I spoke over his point, but what he's trying to say here is, would the U.S. have left 1/4 of ISIS in Iraq and said, let them have this? Actually, that's kind of what happened in Syria, where the U.S. But let's hear what he said.
Leaving 1/4 of ISIS in Iraq in place, and you say, well, they can have their little territory. It's okay. Obviously, ISIS would reestablish itself. Hamas, ISIS would.
So anyway, just a historical anecdote. That's exactly what the U.S. did. The U.S. watched as ISIS went over into Syria, and as John Kerry explained, we sat back and watched as ISIS was approaching Damascus because we thought that would put pressure on Bashar al-Assad to negotiate his way out of power. So Kerry was saying that actually U.S. was using ISIS as leverage, and Israel facilitated this too because Israel was arming the insurgency that ISIS was a part of, trying to overthrow the Syrian government. And when ISIS accidentally one time fired into Israel, ISIS apologized to Israel because they were actually on the same side in trying to overthrow the Syrian government. So even Netanyahu's attempted historical analog doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And also, again, as we pointed out, comparing ISIS to Hamas is so incredibly stupid.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind. It reminds me of the comparing Hitler to Putin, just so ahistorical, and also really offensive to victims of Nazism and victims of ISIS.
Itself too, if we don't finish its last remaining bastion. At the same time, I agree with the U.S. and I've instructed the Army accordingly to give us a plan, a dual plan. One, to vacate the population, the civilian population, because we're not fighting them, we're fighting the terrorists. And secondly, to destroy those remaining battalions. Victory is within reach, and we should all strive for that common target to destroy Hamas, because that gets all the other objectives within our purview. It also gets something else. It gives us hope for the Middle East, hope for peace. You can't have that with Hamas remaining intact.
I wanted to dig into
You actually can't have that with the Israeli government remaining intact. It's a genocidal threat to everybody. And he's talking there about evacuating Rafah, creating a safety for people to leave. Rafah is the last refuge of Palestinians, where all of them have, the majority have fled because Netanyahu's scorched earth campaign in the north. Now he's saying they have to leave there, and he's promising there to create a safety for them. But look what he did hours after this broadcast. They started bombing Rafah and killed dozens of people who are sheltering in tents to escape the bloodbath that he's unleashed elsewhere. So he's now attacking the last remaining safe area inside Gaza while claiming to protect safe areas for the people there.
Right. All while America watched the Super Bowl.
That's right.
That's and
right.
that people online were calling it a Super Bowl massacre. I mean,
Yep.
and all while the Israeli government paid for an ad for Israeli hostages, and all while they created. Did you see Barak Ravid? Is that his name? Barak Ravid, the reporter. He tweeted out that they wanted to create a diversion. The bombing of Rafah was a diversion to get out 2 hostages.
Yeah, Israel claims that it rescued 2 captives, and so basically the bombing of Rafah was a diversion. So a diversion in Israel's eyes, it means massacring dozens of civilians to rescue 2 captives, when those captives, along with every other captive, could have been released unharmed through a prisoner exchange.
Right.
And we don't know. I mean, again, how many people?
And who knows? Yeah. Who knows if they killed more Israelis while they were doing it?
Exactly. I mean, exactly. They've certainly done that so far, and it's certainly plausible to expect that they'll do that again. Is killing their own people in their attempts to and their so-called attempts to rescue the hostages. They kill their own. All right, more of this guy.
Several of those things that you brought up, but let me start here. The president here, President Biden, has been very supportive. He says there is no daylight between you and him, but this is what he said Thursday night.
I'm of the view, as you know, that the conduct of the response in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, has been over the top.
And the Washington Post is reporting this morning, talking to several senior administration officials and advisors, saying that they no longer view you as a productive partner who can be influenced even in private, that Netanyahu has angered U.S. officials on several occasions.
By the way, I just want to say this over-the-top language, this is Biden's go-to when he's talking about Israel-Palestine. Remember, he said Hamas was over the top in their response?
He said Hamas's response to a Qatari and U.S. hostage release proposal. He said that was over the top.
Yeah.
So, and why was it over the top in his eyes? Because Hamas just demanded that there be an end to the massacre. That was Hamas's core demand. That it's
so extreme.
Yeah.
So extreme.
Biden
Calm down, guys.
That's over the top. And Israel, and he doesn't even say Israel directly there. He just says, he's looking down. He can't even look up. He speaks in a very slow, deliberate way. And he says the response has been over the top. Like, whose response? Is he even talking about Israel? It's not even clear from what he's saying there.
It's he probably just memorized. He's struggling so much. He probably just has like one word that he's memorized, one phrase. He'll throw it out
over the top.
Over the top. Yeah.
Over the top. And now we get this leak to the Washington Post. Oh, Biden's really mad with Netanyahu. Any day now he's going to say something. Like, it's all so performative.
Right. And also just makes him look like Biden's Bobo, like Netanyahu's cock.
Absolutely. He's letting himself get humiliated, but he obviously doesn't care. He really is the personification of what Democrats believed about Trump when it comes to Russia, that Trump is so beholden to Russia and so personally attached to it that he'll never stand up to Russia or do its bidding. That's Biden when it comes to Israel.
Right, exactly. And the irony is, and you pointed this out early on in your Russiagate reporting, Aaron, that the one thing that there was collusion over with Trump, right, was actually Israel, not Russia. It should have been called Israelgate.
It should have been called Israelgate. That's right. That's right.
Because they wanted, what was it? They wanted Trump to, what was it? You know this.
They wanted, on his way out of office, Barack Obama decided, you know what? I've been supporting Israeli apartheid and mass murder for my whole presidency. Why don't I just do one gesture for the Palestinians on my way out when it doesn't matter anymore? So in his last month in office, Obama let the UN Security Council pass a resolution lightly criticizing Israel for its settlements in the occupied West Bank. And rather than vetoing it, which Obama would usually do, he abstained. And so Israel and its allies like Sheldon Adelson, who was a top Trump donor, pressured the Trump campaign, the incoming Trump administration, to try to undermine that behind the scenes. And they did. Jared Kushner and Michael Flynn worked the phones trying to stop the UN Security Council from passing that. And so that was the collusion that happened actually with the Trump campaign. But Democrats didn't care because they essentially support that collusion because they're also in Israel's pocket as well, as we're seeing now with this genocide.
Absolutely disgusting.
All right, can we stomach more Netanyahu, or should we move on? Why don't we see a little bit of his appearance on ABC News?
Yeah, mix it up a little.
We've responded in a way that goes after the terrorists and tries to minimize the civilian population in which the terrorists embed themselves and use them as human shields. We drop thousands of flyers. We phone.
Israel uses human shields, by the way. Hamas doesn't. That's according to human rights reports.
And he's bragging here about dropping flyers on people, telling them to go where? To areas where Israel bombs anyway. And yes.
Yeah, Aaron, that's not fair. He's very careful to point out to people where they can go so they can get bombed.
And he's dropping thousands of flyers while dropping 2,000-pound bombs on densely populated areas. Bombs that are not designed to be used in urban environments, as U.S. officials admit, while still giving Israel all the bombs that it wants.
Well, what about they also tweet about it and then shut off the internet?
Yeah, that's right.
So give them credit for that. Yeah.
Palestinians in their homes. We ask them to leave. We give them safe corridors and safe zones. So I think we're doing the right thing. And now, let me tell you one other thing. We're going to win this thing. Victory is within reach.
But you've had more than 28,000 people killed, according to the Ministry of Health in Gaza.
By the way, I want to give Jonathan Karl, it's a low bar, but I don't even know if I should give him a shout out for this. I just want to recognize that he didn't say Hamas-controlled Ministry of Gaza, which is something that CNN tells its staff to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's punished for that.
Yeah, I know. We're not going to see. This may be the last time we see Jonathan Karl alive.
Yeah, like he'll come out like, I just want to make an update to something on the show on Sunday. I mistakenly did not add that the Ministry of Health in Gaza is run by Hamas. I apologize for the error.
Right.
Will never happen again.
Yeah.
You've had hundreds of thousands that have been forced from their homes. You have a lack of water, a lack of food. Don't you feel a moral obligation?
Look at that face while he's saying those things, rattling them off. I mean, that is just the look of death.
Pure evil.
Pure evil. Absolutely pure evil.
To do more, to do something to protect what is seen as to stop what is seen as a catastrophe.
I think that any civilian loss, any civilian casualty is a tragedy. And it's a tragedy that is forced upon us by Hamas. But let me tell you something.
Total classic abuser language. This hurts me more than it hurts you. I wish you didn't force me into hitting you. Domestic abuse language.
They made me do it.
They made me do it, yeah.
I'd be cautious with the Hamas statistics. And I can tell you that according to these urban warfare experts.
Yeah, I'd be cautious with the health ministry statistics too, because they're an undercount. Exactly. They're a conservative figure because Hamas's infrastructure is destroyed. Thousands are buried under the rubble. Therefore, it's impossible to have an accurate count, which is in reality far higher than the 28,000 plus figure that we're currently at.
And of course, they're being starved now too.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Deliberately.
Yeah.
Deliberately.
But yeah, the fact that there are people under rubble who also not only are not being counted, but also could have been saved if there were fuel to use machinery to lift up the rubble is, I mean, it's just like it can't get more diabolical. It's just level upon level upon level of brutality and murder.
And other commentators, we've brought down the civilian to terrorist casualties, the ratio down below 1 to 1.
I mean, how does he say that with a straight face? Does anyone believe that the ratio is 1 to 1?
Well, he's going to get challenged actually on that here, and then we can be done with this because this guy is just—it's impossible to listen to him.
Which is considerably less than in any other theater of similar warfare, and we're going to do more. We're going to
wait a minute. You're saying it's only been one civilian that's been killed for one Hamas terrorist in Gaza?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yes,
we've killed lying sack of shit.
We've killed and wounded over 20,000 Hamas terrorists. Out of that, about 12,000 fighters, and we're doing everything we can to minimize civilian casualties and continue to do so. But one thing we're not going to do is we're not going to let Hamas emerge victorious. And if we leave, it'll be a tremendous victory for the Iran terror axis. It's bad for everyone.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, it's all about the Iran terror axis.
Right.
You know, it's just unbelievable that this guy. It's like watching Hitler go on TV and
Exactly.
Given free reign to defend what he's doing.
Well, someone put this very disturbing, and some people are going to be offended by this analogy, but I think it's worth reading. Israel tells Gazans to go to safe areas like the Nazis told Jews the showers were safe.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair. I mean, obviously, this is not the extermination is not on the scale of what the Nazis did.
Or industrialized.
But this is mass murder. Mass murder is mass murder. Genocide is genocide. This is genocide.
Right.
And we're facilitating it.
And doing it because of who these people are.
Absolutely. 100%. Okay. Let's turn to Senator Tom Cotton. Right now.
Toko.
Loco. Right now the Senate is advancing this so-called foreign aid bill, which really is just a new infusion of American taxpayer money into the military-industrial complex. $95 billion for the proxy war in Ukraine and Israel's genocide in Gaza, also Taiwan as well. Initially, this was packaged with some harsh restrictions on undocumented immigrants, which Republicans had demanded as a condition for authorizing more money for Ukraine. And Biden, so desperate to prolong his proxy war in Ukraine, basically caved to all their demands. Then Republicans said, you know what? Never mind. We don't want that. We're just going to vote through this money for Israel and Ukraine on its own. And Senator Tom Cotton, though, who's a Republican and supports all these measures, he's a holdout. He doesn't want to support this new clean foreign aid bill. He's going to explain why. Because basically, while he's happy with the money in here for the military-industrial complex and to kill people in Gaza and Ukraine, he doesn't like the fact that it included some token amounts of humanitarian aid.
Toko doesn't like the token amounts.
That's left, I have serious concerns about the $19 billion of non-defense aid in there. A lot of that money in there is needful. I think James Lankford did as good a job as he could negotiating with a bunch of stubborn Democrats. Susan Collins did a great job in trying to get more defense aid and less non-defense aid. But at the end of the day, you still have $19 billion. That's almost 20% of the total going to things like budget support for Ukraine's government. Almost half of that $19 billion could go to Gaza, which really means going to Hamas, because Hamas doesn't commandeer aid. It doesn't steal aid. It accepts aid. It's the governing authority in Gaza, and the guardrails in the bill simply aren't adequate. And that $19 billion couldn't be spent at all at a time when we have trillion-dollar deficits, or it could be spent on things like 3 new Virginia-class submarines, or 170 stealth fighters, or more than 5,000 precision strike missiles. So that's another reason why I'm going to be a no on this bill.
Okay, we'll watch.
So this guy's such a warmonger that a warmongering bill isn't enough for him because it includes a token amount of humanitarian aid.
Right, exactly.
No.
Yeah. By the way, I've been better about not responding to comments that I find problematic, but I feel like this is a little PSA. Someone wrote in the comments, all Jews are complicit. That is not actually the way to look at what's happening in Palestine. First of all, is Norm Finkelstein complicit? Are the hosts of this show complicit? Are we more complicit because we're Jews than the Christian Zionists who actually support Israel, as opposed to me and Aaron who oppose Israel? Not only is that inaccurate and wrong, it's incredibly unhelpful for the movement. If you care about Palestinians, you need to get that anti-Semitic crap out of the discourse. Because every time someone tweets like something like that, you're helping Israel point to it and say, look, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. So it's stupid, and don't do it. And yeah, I don't know. That's all.
Okay, this is awkward. This is awkward because I wrote that comment. That was me.
Right,
yeah.
It is awkward.
So this is an awkward moment of the show. I wrote all Jews are complicit.
Right.
So I comment on the show often when I'm watching it.
Yeah.
And so I've been called out. And
yeah. This Jew was complicit in that comment because he wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah. All righty. Let's move on to Senator Chris Murphy. He's the guy who has to come out and pretend sometimes that he cares about all the civilians we're murdering abroad while voting for every single bill that does so. And he's going to talk now about all the new money that's being pushed through to help Israel kill Palestinians.
There be more strings attached to this aid package you're about to vote on?
So
The president does believe deeply in the importance of preserving life inside Gaza and has continually pressed for more humanitarian aid to get into Gaza. There would not nearly be the number of shipments coming in today if this president wasn't pushing hard for change.
It's such a lie. First of all, the amount of aid going into Gaza is now less than it was before October 7th. So in the midst of a genocide, Gaza is receiving less aid than it was during the period before the genocide, when it was just a concentration camp being besieged. And so they always want to. And so yes, so basically, has Biden convinced Netanyahu to let in a little bit more aid than he otherwise would have? Because maybe, but that's not something to brag about. That's all the more reasons to cut off Netanyahu, because Netanyahu was willing to cut off aid to Gaza entirely, which is genocidal behavior. So they're bragging basically about the fact that they've made Netanyahu like slightly less genocidal, rather than cutting off Netanyahu completely so that people can survive. It's so sick.
It's so sick. Yeah. And this is a guy who has paid lip service to saying they should kill less civilians.
Well, we're about to hear that again.
But yes, there are many of us who believe that it is very important for us to make clear with this aid package that if Israel is going to use these dollars to perpetuate this campaign inside Gaza, it has to be done in a way with less civilian life being lost. I think that's
so kill civilians, but just make it less. Just bring down the number. I'm not going to tell you what the number is because it's sort of, we have to feel these things out. But yes, just I'm going to give you the money to kill people, but just try to kill less people. That's the message from Chris Murphy.
Absolutely disgusting. What a scumbag someone wrote, and they're true. They're right. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, would we accept such rhetoric about, Hamas resisting Israel? That when Hamas resists a military occupation, they have to kill less Israeli civilians?
Right.
No, I mean, if one Israeli
their
civilian,
numbers over the top.
Yeah.
They're being over the top. Yeah.
Members of Congress, I know that's important to this administration.
And they're going to speak more about that now.
I think you will clearly hear the president. My guess is that based upon what the president said last week, that you're going to hear the president continue to stand up for a campaign that defeats Hamas, but is done in a way that is much more respectful.
Okay. Sorry. All right. So he's going to continue to do that. Great. Because so far he's been talking about that and it's had absolutely no impact. So we're supposed to feel assured that the president will continue to engage in discourse that has no effect on Israel's actions?
Correct.
Okay.
We're supposed to be satisfied with the PR talking points that they put together to make it look as if they care about Palestinian lives while supplying the weapons that murder them.
Absolutely awful. And they know that. This guy knows that. You know what I mean? He's not, I don't think, someone who wants civilians killed, but he's fine covering for the president who does.
Who knows what goes on?
Who knows? Yeah, it's true.
Who knows?
It's true. Yeah. Who knows
These
the
are
darkness
dark.
that
These are dark
what is
minds.
that quote from The Shadow, that movie The Shadow? Who knows the darkness that lurks in man's mind or something?
There we
I don't
go.
know why the hell yeah.
Okay. Let's turn to Nikki Haley. She is still running for the Republican nomination against Donald Trump. And she is livid because Trump the other day bragged about how he was pressuring NATO countries to spend more on their military, which is one of the aspects of the whole Trump-Russia conspiracy theory that never made sense, because Trump, meanwhile, in real life, was pushing NATO to spend more money on their militaries so they can confront Russia. And Trump made some comments about, how he tried to execute that demand that NATO pay more. And Nikki Haley was not happy about Trump's language, because in the process, Trump basically made a threat to NATO that he'd let Russia do whatever they want unless NATO...
Not only let them, but he'd encourage them to.
So here's Nikki Haley.
Morning, NATO, the Western Alliance, issued a statement responding to remarks Donald Trump made last night at a rally, and they warned it puts U.S. soldiers at risk. Here's what he said.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want.
If elected, would you adhere to the premise that an attack on one is an attack on all?
I mean, absolutely. NATO has been a success story for the last 75 years. But what bothers me about this is don't take the side of a thug who kills his opponents. Don't take the side of someone who has gone in and invaded a country and 500,000 people have died or been wounded because of Putin. Don't take the side of someone who continues to lie. I dealt with Russia every day. The last thing we ever want to do is side with Russia. What we always need to remember is America needs to have friends. After September 10th, we needed a lot of friends. We can never get into the point where we don't need friends.
And we killed a lot of people, a lot of enemies. I mean, they weren't enemies, but we portrayed them that way. Yeah.
Now,
so that's why we need a lot of friends, because we, decrease the population of the world.
We do want NATO allies to pull their weight. But there are ways you can do that without sitting there and telling Russia, have your way with these countries. That's not what we want. If you notice, Russia has never invaded a NATO country. They've invaded Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. They are actually very intimidated by NATO. NATO allows us to prevent war. We need to always focus on preventing war.
Yes, NATO allows us to prevent war by invading Libya and destroying it.
Right, exactly.
And, just the point there about how Russia has never invaded a NATO country. Yes, but after NATO promised future membership to Georgia and Ukraine, that got both those countries in conflicts with Russia. Right. In the case of Georgia, that's because Dick Cheney encouraged Georgia to strike separatists who were backed by Russia, which prompted Russia to intervene. And then with Ukraine, we all know what's happened there. So NATO causes war, and Trump, these people shouldn't be upset with Trump, because Trump's bragging about how he gets NATO to spend more money on war. So they just don't like the way he says it. We had one more clip from Nikki Haley, but we can let's go to that quickly.
Yeah.
Let's go to that quickly.
Talk about the border. In fact, he encouraged Republicans to kill the bipartisan deal that was brokered. And last night, he was also talking about, at this very critical moment for Ukraine, when the Senate is this weekend debating military aid, he came out and criticized the nearly $100 billion aid package. Given what you know, would you encourage Republican lawmakers now to back this nearly $100 billion security supplemental?
Well, the first thing I'll say is, I think that Biden and Congress have done a poor job telling Americans why they should care about Ukraine. And so you can't blame the American people if they say, why are we doing this? The way we need to look at it is, I don't think we should give any country straight up cash, because you can't follow it and you can't hold it accountable. But I do think we should support Ukraine, and I do think
the host there, Margaret Brennan, standing up for this bill, which, yes, it's not straight up cash for Ukraine. It's actually money to go into the military industrial complex.
Right, exactly. So to be fair, that's what she's calling out, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is not what that's not what this is. This is money for Lockheed Martin. How dare you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we should give them the equipment and ammunition to win. Because listen to Putin's own words. He said once he takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries, and that puts America at war. This is about preventing.
I mean, he said the exact opposite. That's an insane statement from Nikki Haley. She's saying that Putin is threatened to invade Poland and the Baltics next. If you watch his interview with Tucker Carlson last week, he explicitly says, no, I do not want to go to war with any of these countries. Like, that's insane. Why would I want to do that? Ukraine has a special significance for Russia, which Putin spent a long time talking about. I think too long, but because there are millions of ethnic Russians inside of Ukraine as a result of how Ukraine's borders have been drawn up. And rather than respecting the rights of those ethnic Russians in Ukraine, ultranationalists backed by the U.S. have been trying to erase their culture. And Putin said that's why he intervened, basically. So it's just like, but regardless, no matter what you think about, Putin's claims about Ukraine, he said the exact opposite about invading Poland and the Baltics. She's just outright fabricating that and doesn't get fact checked.
Yeah, I mean, that's typical and disgusting at the same time.
That's the important reason why we have to support Ukraine.
So anyway, yeah, it's fine.
Is that where didn't she just say, like, there's no war? It's so that there isn't going to be war? What was the last thing that she said? Can we just play that very last part?
Ukraine, Poland, and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries, and that puts America at war. This is about preventing war. That's the important reason why we have to support Ukraine.
So we have to support war to prevent war.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so crazy. Okay. Well, let's hear from one more Excellent voice.
Aaron's bestie.
My bestie.
Well, second best. Well, the bestie is Chris Coons, and then after Chris, we got this guy.
Yes, Adam Schiff, who's running for Senate, and I'm just begging the people of California, please,
You got a great alternative there.
Yeah,
Barbara
don't
Lee.
elect this guy. Barbara Lee is running against him. Katie Porter is also running. I wish Katie Porter would drop out to stop Schiff. This man must be stopped.
Get behind Barbara. Yeah,
he's caused so much damage. He's the guy who got up during Trump's first impeachment and bragged that the U.S. aids Ukraine so that we can fight Russia over there. We don't have to fight Russia here.
Right. I mean, he's doing us a favor, right? Because we argue a lot that this is a proxy war, and he just lays it out.
He really did, and way earlier than other people were willing to admit. Because
he was ahead of the curve.
He was. That was January 2020, and look what that got us in. Russia then 2 years later invaded Ukraine to end the fight that Schiff was bragging about. So anyway, and that's on top of all the Trump-Russia conspiracy theories that he pushed nonstop, and helped turn Democrats into even bigger Cold War jingoists than they were before. So Adam Schiff is just such a positive influence on our politics.
And I want to give some fellow punters a shout out. We got I don't give a Schiff. And then someone wrote Schiff. Here we go. Schiff lib. He's a Schiff lib.
A Schiff lib. That's pretty good. I like that. Okay, let's hear from Adam Schiff when it comes to Trump's comments.
We shouldn't be surprised. I guess we shouldn't be surprised. But when you were chair of the House Intel Committee, and since then, of course, you've spent a good amount of time looking at Donald Trump and Russia. How do you think Vladimir Putin heard remarks like the ones he made yesterday?
Translation. When you were the head of the House Intelligence Committee, you used your position to baselessly fuel this insane narrative that Donald Trump was a Russian agent. And you claimed on shows like Meet the Press to have even seen secret evidence of Trump-Russia collusion that never materialized.
But he couldn't tell us, right?
You were lying about it because he was lying about it. But
because it was too compromising. It was a question of national security, right?
Oh, Putin must be absolutely thrilled. If you look at it from Putin's perspective, the war isn't going well in Ukraine for Russia. Russians keep coming back in body bags. NATO is enlarging around him with two.
How about the Ukrainians in body bags? You care about that?
No, he does not. He does not. Not at all.
It reminds me of the Israel thing, right? Where it's like we know that they want to degrade Russia, i.e. harm Russia economically, politically, and also bleed them. Like, we know that they want that, and they're fine with that. And in fact, that's their preference. They want Russians to die. But like, they had one job to do, allegedly, right? Which is save Ukrainians. And yet they're killing Ukrainians. Like, they're enabling the killing of Ukrainians. And as you often call them, Aaron, they're being used as cannon fodder. And similarly, we know Israel hates Palestinians. We know that they want them to die, civilians, be massacred. But they had one job, apparently, which is to save the lives of Jews. And they actually are fine killing Jews by both bombing, but also just by shooting them as well, as we saw. So again, anyone who cares about Ukraine and Ukrainian civilians should oppose this proxy war and should support negotiations and diplomacy, and should have been doing that, and should be up in arms about the fact that Boris Johnson scuttled negotiations between Putin and Zelensky. Just like anyone who claims to care about Jews and Israelis should be up in arms about this war. All right, that's my...
Two new nations joining NATO. NATO is strengthening. And along comes Donald Trump, there to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory for Russia and for the United States and our NATO allies. It couldn't come at a worse time. Trump's Republican Party is holding up aid for Ukraine. Trump is the gift that won't stop giving to Vladimir Putin. He thinks, I'm sure, Donald Trump thinks this makes him sound strong, but it just makes him look like an incredibly weak leader. Weak in not bolstering our alliances, weak in undermining our security. We have benefited from that NATO alliance as much, if not more, than any other nation. And for him to belittle it this way, for him to signal to our allies, you can't rely on America anymore, it just couldn't be more dangerous and destructive.
You heard the warning, folks, from Adam Schiff. Trump is threatening NATO, which is such a positive force for the world.
Right.
The beacon of liberty, the bastion of freedom.
Yeah, bastion of freedom, yeah. One more. Can I give one more PSA?
Sure. Yeah.
This was someone who I think was attempting to defend Jews, which is very good. So someone wrote, "It's not just Zios that are complicit. I've heard many non-Jews who are just as filled with bloodlust." Okay, but here's the problem with that. And I appreciate we're going to workshop this. Okay. So that's good. You're pointing out that non-Jews are complicit. But the problem is the word Zionists and Jews are not the same. In fact, I don't blame you for thinking they're the same, because in addition to anti-Semites using those terms interchangeably, so do places like the Israeli government. They say that explicitly, that Zionism, that all Jews are Zionists. Places like AIPAC, the ADL and stuff. But the point is, you want to make sure you're not conflating those two things. So when you write, "It's not just Zios that are complicit. I've heard many non-Jews who are just as filled with bloodlust." Well, many Zios are non-Jews. In fact, there are many more Christian Zionists in this country than there are Jewish Zionists. So just keep that in mind. You want to make sure that you're not conflating those two things. Zionists are racist. I agree. Zionists can be Christian or they can be Jewish. And we want to make sure, actually, every time we push back on the idea that Zionists and Jews are the same, we are pushing back on Israeli propaganda and anti-Palestinian propaganda. There you go.
Amen. Katie, anything you want to plug for the Katie Halper Show this week?
Oh, this week I'm interviewing Jill Stein, and I'm interviewing Rashid Khalidi, who we had on this show, who's an amazing guest, Palestinian-American historian, wrote one of my favorite books on this issue, which is called The 100 Years War on Palestine, and some other surprise guests, but that's at youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show.
And that's Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. Yeah. Thank you. Tuesday night at 7 p.m. EST. I did a really cool interview with Max Blumenthal last week. I had on, actually, you know who else I had on last week was I had on Matt Lieb and Daniel Maté, because Daniel Maté and I collaborated on that song, that parody song. Matt Lieb does really great comedic videos about being basically mocking liberal Zionists. And I had on Layla Alabad and Saba Sayed. Saba Sayed was on the Face the Nation panel where she said she refused to vote for Biden because she's someone who cares about reproductive rights. And under Biden, women in Palestine are having C-sections without anesthesia and are being deprived of any neonatal care. So I had her on, and Layla is working on a Listen to Michigan campaign where she's urging Michiganders to write uncommitted during the Democratic primary this month in Michigan.
Yeah, and there was just a desperate meeting by the White House with people in Michigan, with Arab Americans in Michigan, trying to get them to stop abandoning Biden over his support for the genocide. And one of the meetings was recorded, and basically in the recording, John Feiner, who is a deputy national security advisor, we've featured him before on Monday Morning. He basically says it's the weirdest word salad. It's one of the weirdest word salads I've ever read. He's basically like, we apologize not for any policies that we've undertaken when it comes to supporting the genocide, but we didn't make clear that we really do care about Palestinian lives, even as we're supporting their mass murder. Right. That's pretty much what John Feiner's message was. And it's like, do they think that this is going to convince people if they give people these platitudes that's going to convince people to vote for them when they're overseeing this genocide in Gaza? It's, really, it's shocking. They must have such contempt for Arab Americans, for Palestinians, that they think they can be won over with these meaningless gestures and talking points. But that's all they've got, I guess, because they refuse to change their policy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, this has been a great episode of Monday Morning. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Please like the stream and share it. And also go to usefulidiots.podcast.com to support the show and get bonus content. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.